Hi everyone, welcome to Sports Insider. I'm Dan Labbe alongside Chris Fedor. As always, a packed show. Joe Vardon is going to talk Cavs with us. Mary Kay Cabot will talk Ray Farmer's press conference with us. At the end of the day, that's what we took away from Ray Farmer's press conference. That's his candidly. And then Paul Hoynes is going to talk Indians with us. And as always, we'll be joined by Bud Shaw at the end of the show. Chris, Cavs, Celtics, Game 3 tonight. What are you expecting?
I think this is one of the games where the Celtics could get. Just because it's the first home game for the Celtics. They've won 3 of the last 4 at TD Garden. The Cavs, for this group, it's their first road game. Everybody's talked about the different kind of approach that they have to take, the different mentality that they have to bring into Boston tonight. But I think because of the crowd and because Boston's so looking forward to being at home, I think it's going to be a tightly contested game, similar to the first 2 games.
All right, let's head to Boston now. We will talk to our own Joe Vardon, Cavaliers and LeBron James reporter. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you today?
Good. Joe, you just posted LeBron James is right up there among the greats when he plays in Boston, whatever you want to call the Garden, whenever he's played there.
Yeah.
Tonight, do you expect LeBron to be a little more aggressive than what he's been early in the game?
So after he talked before shoot-around today, while some other players were doing their media availability, he first was watching film with one of the assistants, and then walked out onto the floor where David Blatt, Ty Lue, and a couple of the other Boylan, a couple of the other assistants were sort of mapping out a set, an offensive set for how they are going to speed LeBron up and kind of beat a couple of the things that Boston's doing. So yeah, I mean they're he and they are very cognizant of that, of the need for him to go quicker, earlier in possessions to avoid that double team, but also to avoid something Boston's been doing recently, which is sitting in passing lanes on the weak side. That's something the Celtics have done to great success, and have actually picked off some LeBron passes. Those are the passes he's thrown all year, and they've been waiting for him. So that's what they were cooking up today at shoot-around.
Joe, do those potential adjustments include LeBron handling the ball more beyond the three-point line, as in initiating the offense as opposed to going down in the post?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think that's something that you can see. And I mean, it was just so successful. It was so successful all year. I mean, remember, guys, that he didn't start going into the post really until that Brooklyn game. I mean, there had been a few times throughout the year where he worked down there a little bit. Once against Miami. But it was that last Brooklyn game at the end of March when he started to make a kind of a concerted effort to go down there. And the idea was that's what works in the playoffs. But Boston has set up its entire defense to defend that. And we've talked about it for days and days. About doubling in the post, and now this thing with the passing lanes, and that's all predicated on LeBron catching it on the block, doubling him, forcing him baseline, and then picking off his pass when he tries to make that skip pass that he often makes. So, yeah, I could see that for sure.
Joe, when it comes to LeBron James and Kyrie, especially in the fourth quarters, we've seen that these guys kind of like to take turns with the basketball. We saw that a little bit in the Boston Game 2 on Tuesday night. Is that sustainable?
Well, I just look at it from the standpoint of they did what they had to do in that particular game. I wouldn't be surprised to see J.R. Smith play much better tonight. There's something else that's interesting too with the way that Boston has set up its defense. If you think about it, there's a double on LeBron. There is 1 or 2 players sitting weak side. Okay, well that's 4. You only have 5, so that's where all Boston defenders are. So that means obviously some guys are open. And where are they open? They're open right in the middle. You saw it a little bit in the second quarter in Game 2, where the Cavs went straight to Kevin Love in the post or straight to Timofey Mozgov in the post, and it worked. You can see that. I mean, that's not something the Cavs had done much of this year, like sort of the traditional like low post entry game. but it's open right now for a couple of reasons against the Celtics, and you could see some of that tonight too.
Joe, is the lack of production from the Cavs bench, not necessarily in this series against Boston, but moving forward into the playoffs, is it a concern?
Well, yeah, it is, but I mean, if you're getting, you probably know the numbers better than I do, but if you're getting, 69 a game from the big three or something like that, I mean, then obviously that is somewhat of a compensation for, what you're missing on the bench. They just, you would like to see more balance there. You would like to see more of an answer when LeBron has to go to the bench, when Kyrie's out. But they had that in Game 1, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, there are some guys who performed great coming off the Cavs bench. I mean, it's just something, the 7 points they had in Game 2 is not preferable.
Joe, Kevin Love so far in this series, he's 8 of 22 from the field. He's 3 of 9 from three-point range. He's been getting rebounds. He had a decent scoring first game despite not shooting all that great. Can the Cavaliers win a title if Kevin Love continues to play like this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because you have to remember again, he's a number 3 option, and we all need to come to grips with that. I mean, all of us, we need to start looking at him not so much as the guy who, averaged 26 and whatever last year. He is the Cavs' third option. And if the third option is scoring, 14 to 20 points and getting you 12 rebounds a night, that's really good. And so would you like to see him shoot a higher percentage? Of course. And I still think that's going to come. I think that'll come, if JR starts to loosen up a bit and just, Kevin himself, just, getting into more of a rhythm, getting more comfortable, which, we look at Kyrie Irving, how comfortable he's been. And so it's almost like we expect that out of Kevin too. But this can be a process. This can take a while to really get comfortable playing in this kind of setting.
Joe, you're in Boston. You've gotten a feel for the city. You've gotten a feel for the fans. What is the confidence level in the Celtics right now going into Game 3?
I don't think it's very good. It'll be interesting to see how the crowd is tonight. I mean, I'm sure they'll be fired up. They'll be happy for a playoff that was not expected for most of the season. And, of course, with LeBron being in the building, they can't wait for that. But I don't think the expectations are very high. Brad Stevens, we've all just been lauding him, this whole series. What he's telling you every day in the press conference is basically we have to play perfect to beat this team. Yep. That's what he said. And after Game 2, he's like, we did some more things better, but there's still things that we didn't do, and we need to do them. And he's basically saying we have to play a perfect game. And when you start saying that, confidence just, it's not there. I expect Boston to play hard, of course. But I guess the other thing we'll see is, the Celtics are such a fast-starting team. At least they have been in this series. Mm-hmm. If they do that at home, what that will translate into, if that means a more sustainable momentum for them.
All right, Joe Vardon joining us live from Boston, and he will have coverage of the game tonight, Cavs-Celtics. Tip-off is at 7 o'clock. Game is on TNT. You can find all the coverage at cleveland.com/Cavs. Joe, thanks for joining us.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, so Cavs-Celtics, as I mentioned, that is tonight. Something else happened today. We got to hear from Ray Farmer, and we have video of that. Our own David Anderson was there shooting video. Here's what Ray Farmer had to say about Johnny Manziel and the quarterback situation.
There was a report that you guys tried to trade Johnny Manziel to Philadelphia. There were 1 or 2 reports like that. Is that true? No,
that's not true.
With where Johnny Manziel was at now that he's out of treatment, in the building, and beginning the offseason work, where are you? Where's the organization as far as where he stands?
Right, exactly where we were before. We support the young man that he took steps that he needed to take, and at the end of the day, we realized that, he's a part of our organization and we're moving forward. He said it best. He's gonna do his best to show and not talk about it. So I'm probably in that camp as well. Let's just see what happens.
You just quoted Johnny Manziel about let his actions speak louder than his words. So how does that impact your decisions on draft day?
It doesn't. I got to make the best decision for the Cleveland Browns, not for Johnny Manziel, not for Ray Farmer. I got to make the best decision for the Cleveland Browns, and that's what we'll focus on.
Are you comfortable that the starting quarterback when the season starts is on your roster now?
He very well may be. He might not be. It depends upon what you have an opportunity to acquire, and then if that guy comes in and plays better than the guys that are currently here. It's an opportunity-driven league. I think in some respects, nobody would assume that Tony Romo would become Tony Romo, but somehow he's Tony Romo. It's just the nature of the beast. There was a time when Aaron Rodgers was sitting behind Brett Favre, and people were like, well, he's never played, so he can't be very good, because they would do something, and then 3 years into it, they roll him out, and now he's Aaron Rodgers. So end of the day, I think that patience and a plan and the consistency to drive that competition is kind of.
That was Ray Farmer earlier today in Berea talking about all things NFL draft. Well, not really talking about all things NFL draft, writing off questions about the NFL draft. But what did come out is, one, as he said in that video, there was no trade offer to Philadelphia that involved Johnny Manziel. And two, you and I were talking about this before we came on. He doesn't buy into the fairy tale of a quarterback coming in and changing everything.
I mean, Dan, I want to have confidence in Ray Farmer. I really do. And my confidence is not going to stem from what he says to the media in these press conferences. But at the same time, every time he talks, it seems like he's from a different era, or he's trying to build a football team from the 80s. What do you mean you don't believe in the fairy tale of a quarterback? 31 teams in the NFL believe in that fairy tale, and you're telling me I'm going to have the team that doesn't believe in that? If you don't believe in that, then just take a look around the NFL, Ray. I mean, take a look at Indianapolis. Indianapolis got the first overall pick in the draft, got Andrew Luck, and the franchise changed completely. And there they were last year in the AFC Championship game with not a lot of help for Andrew Luck, mind you.
Yeah, we'll have Mary Kay Cabot on here shortly to talk about Ray Farmer's press conference. There's a lot of teams in the AFC, which frankly is not a very good conference. Pittsburgh,
Right.
Baltimore,
Right.
Indianapolis. These are teams that have weapons.
Yeah.
These are teams that have good players, but you add in that quarterback, even if it's not a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning type, even if it is a Joe Flacco type of quarterback, you add that guy in, it can cover up a lot of holes.
I mean, go back to a couple of years ago. New Orleans was looked at as a joke franchise, wasn't it? Everybody was talking about, ownership's never going to win there in New Orleans. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL for years. In free agency, they get Drew Brees. All of a sudden, they win a Super Bowl a couple years later. That was the missing ingredient there.
It's funny how that happens. Let's bring in Mary Kay Cabot. She was at Ray Farmer's press conference. And Mary Kay, we just watched a clip of Ray Farmer talking about, well, first of all, answering your question about Johnny Manziel, whether there was a trade offer or not. He said no. And then later in the press conference, he said that he doesn't necessarily believe in that fairy tale of a quarterback fixing everything. What did you take away from this press conference?
Well, first of all, I did take away that, I still do think that they will try to make a pitch for Marcus Mariota, which, again, I've been saying that for a long, long time. And I think he tried to throw us off the scent a little bit by saying, where do people come up with this kind of stuff? And, well, you know what? We come up with it in a number of different ways, including the fact that the Browns do need a quarterback in the future. And right now they don't know if they have that guy. So that's one thing. I still think that they will try to do that. The other thing, I do think it was significant that he said that they didn't try to trade Johnny Manziel, because that was floating around out there, and I really wanted to kind of try to get a handle on that. And I think they will be open to anything. I think the phone will ring a lot. I think they will be aggressive. I think they will make some deals. I don't know if they will be able to land a Marcus Mariota, but I do think that they will be involved in a lot of trade discussions on draft day.
What did you take away from what Ray Farmer had to say about Johnny Manziel in particular? Not just the whole we didn't try to trade him to Philadelphia thing.
I think they all feel the same way about Johnny. Okay. I think everyone is in wait-and-see mode. I think everyone wants to see if he can back up his words with his actions, and everyone knows. I think everyone in this building recognizes the fact that recovery is a process and it's not a sure thing. And just because you just spent 10 weeks in a rehab facility doesn't mean that the road might not still be bumpy. So I think they all kind of recognize that. By the same token, I think there are plenty of people in this building that still think he has some merit on the football field. I asked Mike Pettin the other day, I said, is Johnny worth, from a talent standpoint, worth everything you guys have to go through? And I don't know if he loves that question or not, but I do think it's one worth exploring. Is he good enough for all the time that it takes, other players to have to answer questions about him, for sending security personnel? You know, I mean, if you have to go through that kind of stuff again going forward, you know, it might not be worth it. But if he can stay clean and sober, you know, maybe there is something to be salvaged there.
Mary Kay, if it is true that there are people in the organization that believe on the football field Johnny Manziel can still make it, where do you think that stems from? Does that still stem from what they once saw at Texas A&M? Does that stem from what they saw in practice? Did they take away some positives in the 6 quarters that fans did not take too many positives away from?
I think it stems from, like you said, their evaluation of him in college. Mm-hmm. I think it stems from how Kevin O'Connell, their quarterback's coach, feels about him. I think it also comes from some of the things that they did see in practice, because I've talked to enough defensive guys that have honestly said he gave us good looks in practice and did things in practice that other people couldn't do. Now, he went off script. There were times when he would zip around and make a play when they didn't even want him to be running around and doing that kind of thing. But I think he wanted to be able to show that he can play this game. So I think they did see things in practice. And I do think, again, that Kevin O'Connell feels as though he can coach him up into an NFL-style quarterback. So I think, you know, but having said all that, I've talked to other people involved with Johnny Manziel in the league that have serious doubts about whether or not he can be successful at this level.
Mary Kay, you mentioned that you came away from that press conference feeling like the Browns were still going to try and get Marcus Mariota, which goes in contrast with what Ray Farmer said about, you know, maybe getting that quarterback, you know, isn't something that changes a franchise. When he said that, is that just kind of his way of selling guys in that locker room, in that organization, that if for some reason they can't make that move, if for some reason Josh McCown is their starting quarterback at the start of 2015, the plan is still to win?
Well, I do think, yes, I think that there's a lot of that going on. But I also think that Ray really does believe that. I think that he really does believe that the quarterback is one piece of the puzzle, and that if you have a really good defense and a very good running game and good players to skill positions and all the other pieces and parts in place, that you can plug in a decent quarterback and be successful. And there's different schools of thought on that. And when Joe Banner was here, he felt the quarterback was the be-all and the end-all, and that you needed a really, really good one. And I think history has shown, for the most part, deep into the playoffs and winning Super Bowls, that the really good ones do win those big games. So, you know, I do think that Ray feels that way and believes that. I can't honestly say that I agree with him.
Mary Kay, we haven't talked a lot of time about, you know, John DeFilippo and Kevin O'Connell here on the show. But if you think about the Browns, you know, Josh McCown would need a resurrection. The running backs that they have right now are young guys who need to be developed and need to be taught the way in the NFL. Johnny Manziel needs some development. So when you talk to people around the NFL about DeFilippo and O'Connell, what is the thought on those guys? Are they the right people to take an offense that was pretty atrocious last year and help it take that next step?
I actually haven't talked to as many people about Flip as I have about Kevin O'Connell. I've been hearing some really, really good things about him. I've had a couple of people tell me, kind of for background, that he is going to be a fast rising star in the NFL. I've just heard really, really good things about him. So I do think that the Browns have something to look forward to there. And I also think that because of that it, you know, that's why it sort of surprises me when I hear, you know, talk that Sam Bradford would not want to sign a long-term contract with the Browns because I do think that they've got some young, energetic, passionate coaches here, and there's a good offensive line, and they really care about the running game. I think the climate is right for a quarterback to be successful going forward. Now, of course, that hasn't been played out over time, in recent history, but I think that they're putting a lot of resources into getting it right going forward.
All right. Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter, joining us on Sports Insider. Mary Kay, thanks for the time.
Thank you, guys.
Of course, you'll have lots off of Ray Farmer's press conference. You can see video of that at cleveland.com/Browns. Can't win without a quarterback. Come on.
No.
Don't try and sell me on that.
And here's the other thing, Dan. If it is true that they're interested in Mariota, and if it is true that they feel like Johnny Manziel can still be something in the NFL, it is going to come down so much to development in this situation. And Marcus Mariota is the kind of quarterback who it doesn't seem like his skills translate as well to the NFL, so he's going to have to go to the right situation with the right coaching staff and an organization that's willing to be patient with him. And you have to ask yourself, are all of those kinds of things in place for him to have success? And I don't know. Those are big questions, I would say, still coming into this offseason, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think so. Anybody who buys Johnny Manziel as a legitimate starting quarterback option in 2015, wow.
Yeah.
I wish I had that kind of confidence.
Good
in,
luck with
everything
that
I do. All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk Indians. We'll bring in our Indians beat reporter, Paul Hoynes, who is going to head to Detroit. The Indians facing the Tigers. They are already 5.5 games back of the Tigers, Hoynesy. The Tigers took care of them at Progressive Field earlier this month. I know it's only April, but is this a series that the Indians have to win?
Well, it's a series they have to show up. I think they have to. Their hitters have to show up. I mean, it is. They've been brutal offensively. Really, it's ugly baseball to watch. It's ugly weather to play baseball in, but it is not. This is not conducive to winning, having a winning record and getting fans to the ballpark. They've struggled, and now it doesn't get any easier. I mean, like you were saying, Dan, they're going to Detroit, and everything's gone wrong for the Indians, and very, very little has gone, wrong for the Tigers. They've done everything right almost.
Hoynesy, I feel like you sold me a bill of goods on Michael Bourne, buddy. Did Bourne leave all of his good juju in Arizona, or what's going on here?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe he's not a cold weather player, but I was talking to him yesterday after the Indians got beat 6-0, and I was asking him about the offense, and he goes, "It starts with me." He kind of he pointed the finger at himself. He goes, "I've got to get going." He goes, "Wherever I played." He's always been a leadoff hitter, and he goes, "That's I've started the offense, and right now he's hitting 226, and Carlos Santana has more steals than him."
Wait, really? That's really a stat? Oh my goodness!
Santana has 2, and Bourne has 1.
Oh boy.
Hoynesy, Cody Allen blew that save the other night. Now, in his defense, I think Mike Aviles is still trying to track down that fly ball to center. But it was a 3-run lead. It was a game that, frankly, look, it changes the whole complexion of that series and what happened yesterday if they win that game the other night. Does this team, and do you still believe in Cody Allen?
That's a great question. And this is his first year that we've seen him as a closer. That he started the year cold. You're the guy. There's no John Axford to hide behind. The job is yours. And frankly, he's looked a little shaky. This guy's had 2 4-run innings already, and before that, I know he hasn't pitched that long, but he's never given up 4 runs in an inning before this season. He's already done it twice this year. So I think there's some questions. And I also think, the way they use the relievers in spring training probably is working into this. They had those 4 guys with 70 or more appearances, Shaw and Cody, Zipsinski and Atchison, and they kind of slow played those guys just to make sure they were recovered. So I don't know if they were like, really kind of raring to break out of the gate when the season started. So that might be playing into this as well. But there's something. This is something we've got to watch, because nothing can tear the heart out of a ball club worse than or faster, I should say, than a bad closer.
Hoynes, you mentioned that the offensive issues start with Michael Bourne, and he has admitted as much. But is there another guy on this offense that you're focused on, saying, this guy really has to get it going, and if this guy gets it going, maybe the rest of the guys will follow suit?
I don't know. I mean, let me read some averages off to you, and these are all the regulars.
Oh, boy.
Bourne, 226. Kipnis, 224. I'm sorry, Bourne, 208. 208. Brantley, 226. Kipnis, 224. Perez, 207. Chisenhall, 182. Ramirez, 174. And Moss, 162. I mean, take your pick right there. I mean, if you had to, I would think the guy they brought in December, Moss, that's the guy they're hitting in the middle of the lineup. They need some production from him. They're not getting it, and and you look at his history. He's a swinging. He strikes out a lot. He doesn't hit for a high average. He's got power, and so he's right now. He looks to me like he's swinging way too hard, trying to impress a new team. And, he's swinging and missing a lot. I mean, there was a time, earlier in the week where he had struck out in half of his at-bats. So, I think that's a key part, because they want him to protect Santana. And I think not having Brantley in there, or, Brantley's back, but I don't know if he's 100% Michael Brantley. I think, those are the guys that really got to make this club go. Bourne, Brantley, Moss. Those are and Santana, obviously, but those are the guys that got to push this club, and so far, they're not.
Hoynesy, Zach Walters, Nick Swisher, they're starting rehab assignments in Columbus. How long until we see those guys, and how much do those guys help?
Well, Walters is going to be ready before Swisher. His injury wasn't as extensive. He didn't have both knees operated on. He had a pulled oblique. So he will be ready. But I'm wondering, just where he fits. He's a utility guy. I would think, just if I had to pick right now, I would think they'd activate Walters when he's ready and probably send him to Columbus or keep him at Columbus. I think Swisher is the guy that has the ability to help the club more out of those two. But he, unfortunately, is going to take a little longer to get ready, at least from what the Indians are saying. He reported to Columbus today. He's going to play tomorrow. He's going to play the outfield. I think he'll probably DH a little bit. But the assignment, when you get go on a rehab assignment, a position player can stay 21 days, and then you got to make a decision. So I don't foresee that him taking all 21 days. But I don't think this is going to be a 2 and out or something like that. This isn't going to be 5 days and he's going to be up here. I think it's going to take a while.
All right, Paul. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
That is Paul Hoynes, our Indians beat reporter. And now we're going to go to Bud Shaw. Bud, look, if we're looking for optimism, the Indians were 5-10 in 2013, right?
Hey, yeah,
So
you're talking to somebody that picked them to win 92 games in the division this year. So
maybe they're setting that up again.
Yeah.
Welcome to my world of bad predicting, Bud.
Glad to be joining you. Well, the NFL draft is a week away, and for whatever reason, there doesn't seem to be the same buzz this year. I've had it explained to me that it's because the first-round picks aren't nearly as high as they usually are. Well, to the rescue comes the latest mock draft on cleveland.com by, let me see if I have this name right, Chris Fedor? It has the Browns acting on the mandate of their owner and trading up with Tennessee to grab Oregon quarterback Marcus Mariota. I mean, that's pretty exciting, right? Well, not to our first commenter who says, we don't need wheeler-dealer sports writers playing fast and loose with our draft picks, Fedor. Specifically, he says, we don't need Albert Einstein or Bo Maverick conducting the draft. So go play Riverboat Gambler somewhere else, Chris. I mean, this is a call for a common sense approach to the draft. You know, like sitting and waiting for a quarterback to fall to you, like Brady Quinn, Brandon Whedon, Johnny Manziel. Am I missing anybody? No, I think that's it. I mean, what could go wrong? The one thing I'll say about Berea since 1999, the one issue I thought we could completely rule out was the possibility that they had too many Albert Einsteins in the war room. In other NFL news, the schedule release shows the Browns playing the Jets, Oakland, and Tennessee early in the first 3 weeks. Reader No Ernest No calls the new schedule a reverse mullet, a party in the front and all business in the back. Well, it's not a bad analysis. The schedule does bring Monday Night Football in late November, and that's usually a party. It's also a time in the Browns' schedule that traditionally features one or more Browns quarterbacks already broken in half like a piñata. I think I speak for many Browns fans who saw the schedule, went game by game, circled the Ravens Monday Night Football, and wished Thad Lewis Godspeed in making his first start of the season. The Cleveland team with the best chance of leaving its audience standing and clapping, of course, isn't the Browns, and it doesn't look like it's going to be the Indians. It's the Cavs who carved a 2-0 lead against the Celtics in the first round of the playoffs. And of course, the talk around town was about a Boston sports writer and what he said about Cleveland's desperation as a fan base and a city. Miguel D. says, sadly, there wasn't much discussion about columnist Dan Shaughnessy's point that the Indians' attendance is so bad the people who run the team aren't sure the tribe is in Cleveland for the long term. Miguel suggests Shaughnessy's information might come from Cleveland sports writers who know what's going on around the team. Come on, we're just sports writers. We're not, despite what you might hear elsewhere, Albert Einstein. And on the same subject of bad man says bad things about our city, we have this final comment. Quote, there once was a hater named Shaughnessy who writes things you don't really want to see. Ugh. Your insults were cheap, but they won't stop the sweep, and that's what this series is gonna be. So, Danny boy, in addition to Cleveland's reputation for great restaurants and a world-class museum, famous chefs, I think we can safely add world-class poetry readings. Take that, guys.
Best part about Browns fans, what I love about Browns fans, is they see the schedule come out. It was like that guy in your comment. And they look at the Jets and they're like, oh, that's a win. Oh, the Titans,
wasn't last time they went there.
The Raiders, that's a win. And then you just want to be like, you do realize there's a really good chance that Josh McCown is your starting quarterback and Dwayne Bowe is your #1 receiver.
Meanwhile, Dan and Bud, people in New York are like, we start with the Browns? Okay, yes, 1-0.
Thank you, Lord.
And
Thank you, schedule
five,
makers.
the 5 Titans fans that exist are like, hey,
we
had a 28-point lead on the Browns last season.
We ought to be able to beat them with Marcus Mariota as our quarterback.
I love Browns fans.
It's
They're
the
just the best. All right, that's another edition of Sports Insider in the books. Thanks to Bud Shaw, Joe Vardon, Paul Hoynes, Mary Kay Cabot for joining us. He's Chris Fedor. I'm Dan Labbe. Catch us again next Thursday at noon. Thanks for watching.